All right. Well, welcome everyone to the basics of residential green building and remodeling, the materials section. As always, a huge thanks to our volunteers, our board of directors, and all of our sponsors who allow us to put these sessions on for free and get them a CEU approved, especially Mitsubishi Electric, Build Equinox, CERV, and Rheem heat pump water heaters. Check them out to help you go green. We've been going through the 5 pillars of green building. If you've been following along, and you don't have to follow in any order, but if you have been, you'll know we've covered energy, health, and we started on the materials pillar where we started discussing the durability aspects, right? So a part of materials is durability, how long buildings can last and keep water out. That's your first thing you need. That's the first and foremost thing you need to do even before you think of energy and water, is get water out, stop water issues. Then you're going to start to look at what the materials are made out of, where they're coming from, and where they're going. And so obviously, if you have the opportunity, what we want to do is target salvage or material from a building reuse store, or we want to refurbish material, whether it be on-site or for a new project, or use reused materials. There's all sorts of, depending on where you're located, building reuse material. One of the most nationally well-known building use material agencies is actually Habitat for Humanity Restore. In Grand Rapids alone, unless they shut one during the pandemic, we've actually got 4 restores, one north, one south, east, and west. So they're all over the country. And then there's other local companies too that aren't, that are traditional small businesses, and it's growing. So make sure before you do anything, check to see if you can refurbish a material, or you can buy a salvaged or reused material. Next, we're talking about pre-consumer and post-consumer. And what's important with those is that, for pre-consumer, the most sustainable aspect is something that's recycled in the industrial process. Post-consumer is something that's recycled after a consumer's been using it. So those are all ways to check the sustainability of all the materials you're speccing. We got a cool little webinar we did with one of our board members, Madeline Walker-Miller, on how they're going to be using textile waste to start building insulation. So that's just one example. There's millions of examples out there. We need more businesses doing this, and we need more people looking, again, asking these questions. Is there pre-consumer? Is there post-consumer? LEED is going to give out additional points, anywhere between 25 and 50% for doing that. Next up is bio-based material, and that's regulated under the ASTM D6866 standard. And again, we'll have that resource link for you. But again, this is the idea, is that imagine if we could just grow all of our materials that we're using right here in the US locally, right? What if we dedicated our farmland to growing materials and making them bio-based, and making them inevitably potentially compostable, which this isn't about that. But, instead of using petroleum-based, oil-based material, plastics especially, imagine that. So the movement is underway. I'm not going to say that it's huge right now, but we need more people like you, as you're speccing products, to start looking at this ASTM standard and seeing what, opportunities are out there for you. Speaking of bio-based, wood, right? So wood is good, right? Don't forget that. Yes, prices have went up, but they're coming back down. And what we know is we can lock up carbon in wood. What is really important with wood, especially if you're getting wood from tropical areas where there is illegal harvesting going on, is that you have a certification. And the best certification for that is the Forest Stewardship Council, or FSC certification. Even if you're not getting tropical wood, while we have really good laws here in the US and Europe and Canada, it's very important that we still do better and that we have more sustainable wood applications. And so look for Forest Stewardship Council certification. on the wood you specify. And it's a little bit of a misnomer, but LEED does not require FSC. None of the green building programs do. They reward for FSC. They only require FSC when you're specifying tropical wood. So you're not adding to the strain on the environment. There's also our friends at the Sustainable Forest Initiative, SFI. You've probably seen a lot of their stamps posted or on wood. So you can check out a webinar we did with SFI to learn a little bit more about what they're doing. One way or another, make sure you're using certified wood. And on that note, they're actually certifying stone now and making sure that the quarries we're harvesting the stone from isn't degrading the environment and it's done in a sustainable way. So there is an agency that I learned about from the Living Future Institute called the Natural Stone Institute. There's probably some others out there in other countries, but you can check them out. And again, making sure that the stone you're using is completely certified. All right, moving on. So there'll be a resource link from our friends here at, I believe their name is now People First, but it's sort of our local first here in Grand Rapids, one of the biggest ones in the country. The local first movement fits in the green building movement in that the idea is we can use the materials we purchase to boost our local economies and our tax base. It's proven that purchasing materials from locally owned businesses within 100 miles boost our local tax base, and also shipping reduces carbon emissions, the amount of shipping, especially if it's manufactured here or wherever you are. So we always talk about national economies or state economies, but actually it's proven that really we're talking about keeping things sourced within 100 miles, which is really what's going to boost the regional or local economy, and that's going to have a much bigger impact. And so it's much more than America first, or wherever you're from, Michigan first. Much more important to try to get everything you can within 50 to 100 miles and encourage local manufacturing and local production. And on that note, all these things we're talking about talk about reducing carbon emissions during the transportation, life cycle. And so what's important is, on the construction side, we know that a small part of our emissions are due to the materials that we choose. And so we need to choose, materials that have lower embodied energy. So we've got net zero energy usage figured out, but that's easy, right? We talked about that. That's getting easier and easier to do. But what we don't know right now is the embodied energy side. How much is being burned up before you even get to operations. And so we did a webinar here with Stacy Smedley from Skanska, the sustainability director there. And she, amazing. She worked with Google and Microsoft and Apple, I believe, a lot of big names, to put together a tool to help, just like an energy model. She put together a tool to do an embodied carbon model for your next project. Now it is more made for the commercial sector. It's definitely big stuff you're doing, but it can be used for single family homes. We've got a guy in Canada who are going to be working, who we're going to have on as a webinar, helping perfect it more on the single family side. And then Rocky Mountain Institute just came out with a resource, and it will be in your resource link, but I'm going to paste it here for you too. We hope to have them on a webinar where, again, they just sort of took ideas out of this and tried to simplify it, like, okay, what are the items you should not be using or could be using? And so they have a great study and report on that too. But, we need to go after the carbon during construction, during renovation, which will be, absolutely important to get things right. Now, you take a lot of these things we just talked about, all of these, what we call attributes, and you bundle them together and you get some sort of label. And so our friends over at the International Living Future Institute, huge thanks to them for being a first mover on something called the Declare label. And so basically manufacturers can declare all of these different attributes we just talked about in a label. So it's just like in ingredients. You're going shopping, you're looking at your food, you're looking at what do I need for my diet or to be healthy, to live better. It's the same thing. We need 100% transparency on all the materials we're buying, and to look at the labels and see what's going on. And so if you have a manufacturer you love working with and you want them to be more sustainable, first ask them to declare. They can go out and declare their products, and then work with ILFI to make sure that it's more sustainable. On that note too, you have something called the extended producer responsibility. So it's this idea that manufacturers are entering into agreements for product take back, or for managing a product at the end of its life cycle. And so again, just seeing if there are, this is like advanced warranty, right? Imagine if every product had a way to make its way back to somewhere else to make sure that it's not landfilled, is kind of the idea. And take that idea and times it by 10. Our friends over at the Cradle to Cradle Institute, I believe is their name, they are looking at this idea of remanufacturing, reutilization, taking, basically they would take, when your house is at the end of its life, or a product's at the end of the life in your house or building, they're going to take it back, remanufacture it, rebuild it, reuse it, compost it. And they're also verifying that all the materials are made in a way that pays people equitably, that doesn't waste water, that also is made in a way that's using renewable energy. So Cradle to Cradle really is the ultimate certification. If you can find materials that are affordable for your product, that meet Cradle to Cradle certification, and they kind of work like LEED, basic, silver, gold, platinum certification. That's sort of the future dream, is to have a green certified house made up of Cradle to Cradle like certified products that, are going to be boosting the local economy, made from renewable energy, made without wasting water, made paying people an equitable, fair amount of money, and all that. So they have a lot of materials that are getting certified. So make sure to check them out. And ultimately, I just want to remind you, because there is a lot of misunderstanding, that LEED does not certify products. I have to repeat it every day, and I understand that there is confusion out there, but there are, again, these are all attributes. That's how you get your LEED points. However, there are other agencies out there that do certify products. Passive House Institute US is certifying more for durability and efficiency. Indoor Air Plus from the EPA. And the one that does green certified products is the Home Innovations Lab. So again, these are being certified for performance, not necessarily sustainability attributes, but more for performance. So again, if you have a manufacturer you like working with, a product you like working with, ask them, can you get it certified by Passive House, Home Innovations Lab, Declare, Cradle to Cradle? Just pick one. If they can't, why? What is the problem? Why can't they be transparent and open about their product? I would just, and maybe it's a cost thing, and that's fair, but I would put that on them. If you want to make sure you're using green products, these attributes, that's the first step. Look into all those attributes we talked about, but then make sure the products are certified and it's verified that they're actually, these actual attributes are working. Our friends over at the Blue Green Alliance, they have a whole database for you, and it's not just for multifamily. So we did this webinar with them, but absolutely can be used on single family. It's just that their sort of goal was to target affordable housing multifamily, and their ultimate goal is to give you a database where you can search all of these green attributes we just talked about, also where they're manufactured, where they're located, what certifications they have, also health benefits and attributes. So we are hoping to do another session with our friends over at Blue Green Alliance, but they have a resource for you to just, again, make it easy to find these products, and they keep this database up to date. as well. But, like I said, it's, fire rating can be used as a way to diminish sustainability. One perfect example of that is in furniture, where right now we have to choose between flame retardants, which can be toxic to our health, especially kids, or we have to choose between poor performing materials that have, things that are still flame retardant, but they don't work very well. And so sometimes that's a false choice. And so, for example, I just learned, and we're going to be doing a session on this next year, I just learned that there are coverings that can be put into furniture. And the reason I didn't get into it too much is because we're just really more talking about infrastructure, and you really can't control what your clients are doing. But there are these covers that can be put on furniture, and these covers, they don't have any, there's no flame retardants at all, zero chemicals, non-toxic, and the covers themselves resist fire. And I need to learn more about this. And so, those are just examples where, yeah, there could be some trade-offs, but sometimes flame retardants are used, or flame are used as a way to sort of throw out sustainability, unfortunately. But it is important to think about it. So I want to make sure that we get to more of our items here. So I am going to move on, but I would love to discuss more if they come up in the session. So let's move on so we can finish material petal, and then try to start pillar, that is, and try to start on water. So kind of the last thing here is, at the end of the day, don't assume that a building or a home or a multifamily apartment or an existing project needs to be trashed. I think it's easy for us to just assume we just need to knock everything down. We really need to focus on deconstruction as a first, or, well, not even deconstruction, but rebuilding, renovating, remodeling. We're going to significantly reduce costs in carbon emissions, embodied carbon, and repairing character, if you will, by ensuring that we rebuild and reuse what we have instead of trashing it and building new. Second, we need a full deconstruction crew in every single city all over the country who can pick materials apart and then reuse them in some fashion, create a secondary market. So again, don't just trash everything, but try to work with those local Habitat for Humanity restores or those local deconstruction supply houses, and let's find a way to find a place. Now, I admit many things are not designed to be reused, and that's the problem. We got to go back to what I just said before. We need to make sure everything that is built is designed and spec'd on your product to be reused in the future. So that's the starting place. So our friends over at the Building Material Reuse Association did a really cool webinar with us. It's a little dated, but you can check it out. But check them out, and they've got all sorts of ideas and conferences on building reuse markets around the country and finding strategies for, it's both the in and the out. You got to find the material, and then you got to move the material, and there's got to be an economic advantage to it. So, and then while you're building, try not to trash everything. And so try to divert everything you can. I know it can be tough. There's tight lots out there. It's expensive to divert waste. There's a lot of barriers. And depending on where you live, there may be nothing around you. For example, we had an asphalt shingle diversion scheme, not a scheme, it was a good thing, that they were turning it into road bedding, and then that place got knocked out by the pandemic. And so anyway, sometimes you're limited on where you are, but try to look around. At the end of the day, if you can create, work with a MRF that takes everything in one bin and recycles it and gives you a nice little report like the one we see here, You know, they kind of sort everything for you and then weigh it out for you, give this report. These are the reports we use for LEED and Enterprise Green, and also so you can tell your clients, hey, we recycled as much as we could, and that's important to us. And you know, here's proof, you know, that we did that. And then the next level of innovation is starting to move away from building everything on site and moving everything into the factory. So there's a whole gamut of, you know, things, you know, there's a whole gray area. It's not a black or white world, from what is built offsite to what's built on site, all the way from just, you know, pre-painted, whatever it might be, or, you know, painted in the field, painted in the, you know, it's like painting cabinets in a, you know, in a workshop, all the way up to full blown modular construction, right? And we want to start moving down that modular construction direction for a lot of different reasons. For one, you're going to get better quality control. You're going to get less weather damage, which is going to cause less moisture and water damage. And you know, there's other ways to manage people in one location as well. And so we want to head to a world where we're starting to modularize things. And there's lots of green benefits to do that. In fact, I think, and I forget the quote, and Ken here will quote it for you if you go back and watch the webinar we did with Ken, and we're going to do another one with him soon. But, you know, upwards of, I would say 70, 80% of all construction waste is recycled right there in the plant as well, in most modular settings. Not all, but most modular settings. The other thing too, from a sustainability standpoint, is you've got production, you're cranking it out. So if we can, you know, green up just one production line, then you've got hundreds or thousands of homes, multifamily units that are already green and inspected there on the site by a local inspector until they get in the field. So highly consider modular. We're also looking at barn dominiums. We're looking at steel framed buildings that can be placed on site on a slab and then finished on the interior for almost half the cost of construction. Those are some things we're looking into and hoping to have more information on soon. You know, with the cost of wood going up, and who knows if they go back up again, people are spooked about that. You might have to look at steel or some other concrete or some alternative, you know, materials out there. So, and then again, advanced framing, right? This is an energy efficiency strategy. You're going to fit more insulation, less thermal bridging, but again, it's also a material strategy because you're using less wood. And you want to use as little as wood as you can. Remember, wood is good. You want to use wood, but you still don't want to use too much of it. It still costs too much money. So reduce as much wood as you can, save energy, and improve your material score. And then at the end of the day, natural building and getting back to the way we used to build, but doing it in a safe, effective way. We're seeing straw bale homes, even in cold climates, right? Everybody tells me you can't build straw bale in cold climates and wet climates because it will mold, but that's been proven false. You just have to have the right strategies. Straw, clay, rammed earth, you name it. These are locally sourced materials. In some cases, right, you dig them right up on the site and then build it right there. We need to start moving towards this for healthier materials, more naturally materials. And I know that this flies in the face of what I just said about modular. And I think it's going to be a two-prong approach, modular and site-based sustainable materials. We're also seeing prefabricated straw bale, structurally insulated panels coming out. But I think we do need to have more natural materials being used, both for our health and just for the type of things we're doing. So you can check that webinar out. We did Siggy Coco, down to earth design, some amazing things she's doing. So you can check her out on this webinar. So that concludes our materials section. Please let me know if there is any questions or further comments you have that I can answer before we move on to the second to last pillar, which would be water. But yeah, let's get into the water pillar and then go from there. So I think the most important thing to know about water is just real quick. We don't want to spend too much time here, but there are a lot of issues. First is cost, and especially in cities, the cost to clean and distribute and remediate water is going through the roof. And just because you're on groundwater, I'm on groundwater, doesn't mean you don't pay for your water. That would be false assumption. You pay because when your water system goes down, you will have to pay to repair it and maintain it. And the more water you run through that system, the faster it's going to go down. So don't believe that if you're on groundwater that there's not a cost. It's just a deferred cost. But in municipalities, it's a tax cost, right? It's your tax dollars. So it is alarming, especially for low-income households and in areas of in communities of color. It's not fair to have to be paying these fees. And then you have drought on the bottom right there. Even in Michigan here, where we have the Great Lakes, we have been, thankfully, we just got out of it, but we were experiencing a major, for us, a major drought. Certainly not as bad as California and Nevada, who rely on this water for their energy, for their renewable energy. But it is a huge problem. And then it looks like this stunned me, but apparently saving water can help slow COVID-19 and protect people in hospitals. The hospitals are sucking up our water to keep people from dying of COVID. So who would have thought that, COVID connects to air quality and now is connected to water conservation. So it's important. So here's a challenge for you all. Here are some different ways we use water. On the top there is your faucet. Next to that is landscape. Then is your dishwasher or clothes washer rather. Then your toilet. Then leaks. Then dishwasher. Then shower. So what I want you to do is take a second to put into the Q&A box in the order from top to bottom, which one of these, on average, it changes, but which one of these on average in American households is going to use more water from most to least. So again, you've got faucet, you've got landscape, you've got clothes washer, you've got toilet, leak, dishwasher, and then shower. So just real quick, do that, and then we'll have a quick discussion around that. And for those of you watching this on demand, please do drop it into the comments box. So hopefully you had some time to drop that into the comments. So here is our order here. We've got toilet is our number one water using device by far. Just right out of the gate, it is like a clear front runner, believe it or not. And then you've got shower coming to a close second. And then you've got your faucets, mostly your bathroom faucets, but to some degree your kitchen faucet. Then you've got your clothes washer. Then you've got leaks, and dishwashers are only like 1%. It's so small. Now you'll notice what's missing from here is irrigation, and one of the reasons irrigation is missing is because that is the wild card. So if you live in a small urban Michigan Grand Rapids home with a tiny little lot, you're not going to use any water on that thing, barely at all. It's not even going to show up on the list. But if you live in Texas on 5 acres of Kentucky bluegrass, well, you're going to be at 50 or 60%. So it really depends. But on average in America, landscaping only accounts for 30% of your water, and indoor water is way, way bigger problem. You don't see it. You don't see it happening, but indoor water is a much bigger problem and a much easier solution to work on that we need to be dealing with. So where do I get those numbers for? Well, you can fact check me at the Residential End Water Use and Research and Trends. And we did a webinar with these folks. They did a 1999 study and then they updated it in 2016. So you can check that webinar out and look at, just these different trends that they looked at and how they changed from 1999 and then where they plan to go, in the future. So toilets, number one water user. So let's do some potty talk here. I love it. I love part of my job is I get to talk about toilets, and it seems to be more so every day these days because water bills are going up and drought and everything. And it's crazy because this is not a comfort thing like a shower, right? That is you're going after people's comfort. It's not irrigation. You're going after people's lawns. This is simply just replacing a toilet, which nobody even notices. They flush it and they're on their way. And as long as it works, we're all happy. So put this, write this down. 3 gallons per flush. That's sort of your worst case toilet. 1.6 gallon per flush. That's what you're going to legally be able to get away with code. 1.28 gallons per flush. That is the new green standard. I'd say it's still high flush in my opinion, but it is now the green standard. Most of the green programs start rewarding points at 1.28. 1.1 gallon per flush, 1 gallon per flush, 0.9 gallon per flush, 0.8 gallon per flush. That is your sort of super efficient ideal. Then you've got 0.6, 0.5 gallons per flush, and then down to 0, right? Composting toilets, don't really see them. Love the idea. Still never really took off, lots of maintenance and lots of other issues, but you could have, in theory, a 0 water toilet, and it is happening, and there are ways to do it. And this also has the place logo next to it, which we'll be discussing in the next session. But again, this is then, of course, diverting that waste to be reused as soil in some capacity. So it has benefits that go beyond just saving water and have when we get into place in the next session, we'll be talking about what that means for a larger impact on the entire community and region or country. Pressure assist was all the rage for a while. This big recall came out. There were some other issues that happened. It might be coming back, but that was sort of where you saw a lot of your low flow toilets come from. And dual flush, of course, that is sort of the current, anyone who talks about low flow and green and lead, they all think dual flush. That's where your mind goes. And part of the problem with dual flush is which one is which? I don't know. A lot of people have no clue which one is the low and which one is the high. And you're in a hurry, and especially in more, commercial settings where it's not your toilet, but you just don't know. It's just a lot of confusion. And so I get really excited about vacuum assist technology. I'll drop a link in the chat there for you. But, basically, before flush, when the water fills the tank, the inner chamber, air is pushed back into the patented air transfer tube. And this pressurizes the tapway, priming the toilet for a powerful and quiet flush. During the flush, when the flush button is pressed, water leaves the inner chamber and pulls air away from the trapway up through the air transfer tube. This creates a vacuum-assisted pull that accelerates the force of water and waste flowing through the trapway. Once the flush is complete, the system refills and primes for the next flush. So I have this. We have affordable housing developers, renovation developers who are only using these things now because of how super efficient they are. But these Niagara Conservation stealth toilets, and there are other 0.8 gallon per flush toilets, they're single flush. And they have ones that are certified to ADA, and they're only 0.8 gallons per flush. That's half the code. And they work and they don't break down. And we're seeing more and more of them get used. And so again, this is a real simple way to cut those water costs out. If you want to learn a little bit more, we had our friend Richard Rossi from Niagara on not too long ago, and did a session, Water Savings with Every Flush, and talked about this new toilet technology that they have through vacuum assisted, and they're doing some new pressure assisted that we'll be talking about in the future. But this is really, I think, the future of where we're headed, unless someone can find a better, effective way to do a 0 water toilet. It's really just the way that we need to go. So for the sake of everyone's time, I want to be respectful, and I want to wrap up now. And we will continue with water next week. We'll finish water on the next session. and then start on place. And so we didn't plan a next session originally, but we were going to do it next week. So we'll send you the information on how to access that. And then we should be able to finish up the 5 pillars of green, because place will be such a short talk, and we only have a little bit left on water to go through. So I do want to be respectful of your time and let you know you are now approved for your continuing ed. If you are watching this in the future, not right now, on demand, head over to our Thinkific channel. And from there, you can take the quiz with an 80% passing rate, or you can watch it on the Green Building Certification Institute channel and take the quiz, or whatever channel you're watching this on. And then for those of you watching this right now, again, and you're wondering where your certs are, again, our friends over at Gutenberg Certs are going to hopefully send those out tonight or tomorrow. Check your spam, certs@gutenbergcerts.com. You will see what you'll see your certificate from them there, if you've attended the entire session. And again, before we wrap up, a huge thanks to our board of directors, our volunteer, our new executive director, Jose Reina, everyone who allows us to do what we do, especially our top tier sponsors. That's Mitsubishi, who's going to help you go all electric heat pump systems, build Equinox for fresh air systems that detect pollution and get rid of it, and Rheem, ProTerra water heater for heat pump water heating that uses all electric, super efficient water heating. Check them out, and everybody else who helps us do what we do.
Be sure to check out all of our courses available online that you can watch anytime and anywhere to pick up your CEUs. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube to get weekly updates and stay up to date on green building science courses, webinars, and home tours. Thanks again.